My name is Fred A. Wilcox, and I'm an associate professor in the writing department at Ithaca College, and I have been here for about 25 years. I was living in New York City. I was living on the Lower East Side, which is now called the East Village. I was homeless, so I was living in the streets, and I really wasn't paying a lot of attention to the Vietnam War. I was reading the newspapers sometimes, but I was basically busy surviving myself. And that was very, very difficult to do. But I got a message that my cousin was dying in St. Albans Military Hospital. Now, my cousin had been in the military for 20 years. He was a loyal American. He was a loyal soldier. He loved the military. He loved the United States of America. And he probably would have continued for another 10 years in the military, but he was in St. Albans, and I went to see him, and he was on the psychiatric ward. Well, I couldn't really figure that out because he had an aneurysm in his brain, and there was nothing wrong with him psychologically. He was in a lot of pain. He was suffering. So I walked into this ward, and I couldn't believe it. It was like a Civil War hospital. There were all these young guys, as I said. They were out of their minds. They were screaming. They were crying. They were swearing, cursing. And they were tied down. A lot of them were tied down with rags, with rope, with all sorts of things. It was just, I thought, I was like the Civil War hospital. I was appalled, I was horrified, I was disgusted, I was upset because these were people, for right or wrong, who had gone to Vietnam, served the country, done what the country asked them to, and then were being treated like throwaway dogs. They were not being treated well, they were not being cared for. So I was shocked, I was horrified, and right before I left, my cousin pulled me down. He couldn't talk very well, and he whispered, he said, Freddie, that's what he called me. He said, I don't go for this Vietnam thing. He said, promise me you won't go. Well, I was amazed. I couldn't believe it. There was my cousin saying that he was opposed to this war in Vietnam. So I went out, and I made up my mind at that time that I was going to find out exactly, as close as I could find out, what was going on in Vietnam. So I started reading. I started talking to vets. I hung out in bars a lot, so it was easy to find vets. And I started asking them, what's happening over there? They all said the same thing, every single one of them. It's wrong. It's crazy. We're losing. We're not going to win. We're just killing people. The government's lying. And so at that point, I began to get involved in the anti-war movement, and I continued my involvement in the anti-war movement until 1971, when I went to Washington, D.C. We went to, the idea was to close down the city of Washington for a day in our opposition to the Vietnam War. And I was beaten. A policeman attacked me, broke my leg, threatened to kill me, smashed my knee to pieces, and so that after that, the war was really winding down after that, and I didn't really get involved too much after that in the opposition to the Vietnam War. But I have to say, again, to the people who say, well, the people that opposed the war were not loyal Americans. They didn't like the United States. They spat on Vietnam veterans. That's all nonsense. It isn't true. The anti-war movement was made up of doctors, lawyers, professors, truck drivers, Vietnam veterans, peace activists, all kinds of people from all walks of life, Gold Star mothers who had lost their sons in Vietnam. And all we wanted to do, simply, very simply, was end the war and bring Americans home so that they wouldn't be killed, they wouldn't be maimed, they wouldn't be driven crazy. That's all we really wanted, and that's what we were working for. And we didn't spit on vets. We didn't hate veterans. And I think, myself anyway, I'm very glad I did what I did. And my only regret is I didn't do more. I didn't try harder to make more of a commitment to ending that horrible genocidal war. People say, well, students are apathetic. I don't think students are apathetic. I think students have been tricked. They've been tricked into believing that somehow all you really need to do in this world is look out for number one, look out for yourself, go to school, go to the best college you can go to, study really hard, get A's, and then you'll go out in the world and you'll get a job, and then you'll get a house, and then you'll get a family, and everything will be okay. I think we think that, well, if you just keep quiet, things will change on their own. The leadership will, the Congress will change. I don't know. There's no evidence that Congress will change anything. There is no evidence that they're going to do anything about global warming. There's no evidence that they're going to do anything about war. There's no evidence that they're going to do anything about poverty. Students get out of college, they're in debt, 60,000, 80,000. My own son is in debt, massively in debt. So you have the next 40 years to work and pay debt. That is unconscionable, and that is corruption, and that is exploitation of students. But I think I blame the colleges and universities. I blame them because most colleges and universities have become basically training grounds for business, training grounds for corporate America. Some colleges and universities admit that. They say, yes, that's our job. Our job is to make sure that our students, when they get out of college, get good jobs. Well, what kind of jobs? They're going to go and work for Dow Chemical? What students don't understand is that your generation, is probably facing some bigger crisis than our generation. The Vietnam War could have gone on for the next 50 years, and it would not have destroyed the environment. Global warming cannot go on for the next 50 years. Our environment is imperiled. People should be standing up every day, everywhere, and demanding that our government stop quibbling, stop talking about it, stop debating it, stop discussing it, and do something about it. So I think the problem is that students have been lulled into some sort of false sense of security. Human beings tend to stick where they are, stay where they are, and say, I know I'm in danger, but it won't happen to me. I won't drown. I won't be killed. It won't happen to me. And I think that is exactly what has happened in academia. Academia is telling students it might happen, not directly, but indirectly. It might happen to somebody else again in some other country, in islands in the South Pacific, that it might be inundated with water. It might happen somewhere where there's a lot of desert, but it's not going to happen here. We're going to be okay. And I think it's not the message that we should be giving to students. We shouldn't. I don't mean to be scaring students. I don't mean to be upsetting them needlessly. I don't mean to be repressing them, but inspiring them. We should be inspiring students to take responsibility for the world in which they live. And I don't think that higher education is doing that at all. Not at all.